Hey, what's up guys? This is Coach Ronnie. Today we're going to answer a question. Today's question is submitted by Kellen. What are some drills, exercises to gain exit velo and get a faster 60 time? Well, there's a lot to this answer, so let's get started. So, a couple of things to understand that's going to help improve your exit velo. Depending on where you're at in your development, chances are you have a lot of opportunity to improve by simply improving your max strength. Basically, being the strongest human possible. Now, at a certain point, improving your strength, your max strength, doesn't benefit you anymore, but chances are you aren't there yet. At some point you will be, but up to that point, you can get a lot of improvement. You can benefit a lot by just improving your max strength. So why is that important? Well, it's important because your body learns how to produce maximal force, okay? The more force you're able to produce, the more power you're going to have, the more effort that you're going to be able to express. And so that is going to be very important. Secondly, you're going to be able to maximize your motor unit recruitment. Basically, you're incorporating every fiber of your body into the swing specifically. So as we improve our max strength, our body becomes more efficient in the movement. We are better at incorporating the body and every muscle fiber to get the action done. So very important. Improving max strength is going to help improve your motor unit recruitment, and it's also going to help you produce maximal force so that it takes less energy to generate force. So the higher the ceiling that you possess as far as producing force, the less effort you're going to need every single swing, because you're not necessarily swinging with maximal effort. You're swinging with optimal effort. The optimal force is what you're looking for. But if you have a very high ceiling, high threshold to produce force, then it's going to allow you to repeat that and not have to go 100% every time. So improving that ceiling is going to help you a ton. All right, so when it comes to improving your max strength, there are two exercises I recommend: the squat and the deadlift. The deadlift is a wonderful exercise because it does a great job of training the lower half, and it's in a hinge pattern. So what I want you to do is to make sure that you're obviously doing this correctly. I'm going to share a couple of tips that I think are most important when it comes to doing a heavy deadlift. Now, with that said, you want to make sure that you slowly ramp up when it comes to training heavy. You don't want to go from not training to trying to do a 1 rep max. So start with higher reps, maybe 8 to 5 reps, and then slowly over the course of weeks and months, you can slowly start to increase the intensity, decreasing the reps, and making sure you're doing it correctly. So the first tip I want you to be aware of is getting rid of the slack from the bar. So what is common is yanking the bar off the ground. You'll set up, and most people will bend their arms and then they'll yank it off the ground. And that is something that's going to pull you out of position. It's going to round your upper back, pull on your shoulders, and you don't want to do that. So what you want to do is, like I said, get rid of the slack. So a quick drill to practice that is when you set up underneath, with your feet underneath the bar, you're going to set your hands and you're going to pull up on the bar. You pull up on the bar without letting the plates leave the ground, and you're going to hear this clicking action. That is you getting rid of the room between the bar and the plates. That's going to, again, get rid of the slack, and that's going to be that's going to provide more tension in the system before doing the lift, which is going to help you be in a more stronger position overall. So that's tip number 1. Number 2 is you want to make sure that you have the bar pretty close to the shin on the start, but without making contact. Now what tends to happen is we get in too tight to the barbell, and we go down to set up and grab it and lift, but because the bar is up against my shin, the bar is going to travel out. And that is a mistake that's way too common, and it's going to lead to you losing the bar forward. So what you want to do is you want to have, I'd say, about 2 fingers width between the barbell and your shin. So using 2 fingers, I measure. I just want to have a little bit of room so that the bar can travel in towards me as it leaves the ground. Okay, the last thing I want you to understand when it comes to the deadlift is that the lockout occurs at the hips. You want to think about squeezing your butt, pressing your hips into the bar, because that is going to make sure that there's no additional pressure on your back. So what that looks like is you want to make sure that you're engaging the glutes at the top. So that is going to make sure that you're recruiting basically the strongest muscles in your body, which is the backside. So those are going to be very important, and you want to make sure you're doing those three things every time you train your deadlifts. Even at lighter loads, at lighter weights, you want to make sure you're incorporating all those three things so that you build good patterns, good habits when it comes to doing deadlift. All right, so now the next thing I want you to understand is, well, we're improving our max strength, but we also want to now be very specific to hitting. So we want to train that rotational plane. There's 3 exercises I'm going to show you that I think do a great job of getting you started working on that stuff. And this is great even once you become an experienced athlete in the weight room. So the first one is training a band, and this is going to help really extend your hips and maximize recruiting that backside. So it's interesting, when we train in the deadlift, we learn to train the hips to lock out and generate as much force and really contract and get a lot out of it. So this is now going to start to look a lot more like hitting, like that swing pattern, and so now it starts to translate to the batter's box. So what you're going to do is essentially you're going to use 2 rubber bands. I'm going to set up as a right-handed hitter. I was a right-handed hitter, so this makes a lot of sense, but you can do it if you're left-handed as well. So what you're going to do is you're basically going to wrap the band around an anchor. So I'm using the rack here. You want to make sure it's the same height as your hip. Okay, from here, I'm going to wrap it around my back shoulder. So behind my back shoulder, from here, I want to make sure the band crosses my hips. And I'm going to step out so there's a small amount of tension. From here, hands are going to be, they can be on my head or on my shoulders, but they're going to be out of the way. My focus here is rotation through the hips and maximal contraction, it's called. So I want to maximally lock out the back hip. So I'm going to rotate, squeeze, I feel that backside squeezing, and I feel a firm position through the back foot. So tension here. I'm going to turn and squeeze, locking out the hip. Now the band is pulling me back, and I am going to pull out against it. And also, I'm trying to do this as quickly as possible. So I'm working very, very fast when I go through this exercise. So you want to make sure that you're turning the hips. You want to finish square to the pitcher, if there was one out there. You're finishing square, and you're thinking about driving through the hip and finishing with a strong and stable back foot. All right, so as you start to understand this exercise, you can now start to add a stride step. You want to make sure that you start with a little tension. You're going to stride, and then you're going to turn your hips. Make sure you feel that contraction. Hips are squared out in front, and then you can reset. Stride, rotate. Stride, rotate. So that is the first exercise you can start using to help you train in that rotational plane. That's going to help you improve using your lower half that we've developed from the deadlift and the squat. All right, so exercise number 2. It's almost like a level 2 because we're building on top of the last banded exercise. So now we're going to incorporate the arms. I'm going to anchor a thinner band, a lighter resistance band, to a rod. Okay, so this is anything. This is common in a gym. It's just a rod, and honestly, you can just take any resistance band. Just make sure it's light, and lock it around a rod, and you're pretty much ready to go from there. So just make sure that it doesn't slip, and that it can't slip, so that there's no injury there. So what you want to do is you're going to start in your hitter stance. Hands are going to be nice and wide, and basically you're going to go through a extension of the arm. So I'm gonna rotate, going through this in slow motion, I'm gonna step, rotate the back foot, turn the hips, and I know how to do that now based on that last exercise, but now I'm gonna finish with an extension of the arms. So one thing you want to think about as well as you go through this exercise is the sequencing, the order in which the body fires. So when we're hitting, you want to make sure that you're using your lower half and the force that you're able to generate from the lower half first to kind of get everything started. Once you've done that, now you can think about finishing and following it with the hands. So as you go through this, you want to think about initiating everything through the hips, through the lower half, and then finishing with the upper half. And so it's going to do a better job of transferring that force from the ground into the back. So those two exercises in conjunction, working together, are going to do a great job of incorporating this rotational element. It's going to train you to fire the backside and generate force, and it's also going to train how to keep the hands accelerated through the zone. And so that's exactly what's the goal when we're thinking about increasing exit velocity, is how can we incorporate every element of the body, every muscle fiber in the body into the swing. So by training max strength, which is going to help improve motor unit recruitment and producing maximum force, and then also training in that particular plane, that rotational plane, those two things are going to help improve that exit velocity. So the thing we see from very successful hitters, power hitters, is that there's extension through the front side, through the front leg. So when you go through it, I'm going through this in slow motion, but at contact, you see an extended front leg. So that front leg is not yielding, it's not bending, it's not leaking none of that force. So as you stride, you go through your swing, there's drive through the ground on the front side, and there was an actual study done by a university that shows that there's more activation through the front side, through the tibialis, from experienced hitters. So there's something to that. There's something to this extension through the front side at contact. So I say that because when you're going through your med ball drills, you want to think about finishing with extension through your front side. So the last drill that I'm going to recommend for you is using a med ball. So the benefit of a med ball is that it allows you to train in a ballistic method, which is acceleration through the motion. You're not going to slow down. There is no deceleration. I want you to accelerate, go through this as explosively as you can. So we're going to go through the shot put, which is basically pressing through the wall using the med ball. And so what I want you to do is you're going to set up in your hitter stance. Again, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to go right-handed here. You're going to put your back elbow in line with the center of the med ball. Think about an arrow, pulling back an arrow. And so in that position, front side is down, front elbow is down. From here, you're going to load, you're going to step, and then extend through the wall or whatever you're using. And so with that, you're now accelerating against a lighter load, which is exactly what you want to do when you're hitting. And so this is going to help train incorporating that strength you're developing in the deadlift, that rotational velocity you've done with the bands, and now using it with an implement that's going to allow you to accelerate. Again, when you're using the med ball, you want to take a look at how your front side is finishing. You want to finish against an extended front side when you release the med ball. So, using these three exercises in a training program, when you're in off season, you want to think about doing this maybe 3 to 4 times before any type of strength session to get the most out of it. When you're in season, you're playing a couple games a week, you maybe want to do this once a week, okay? You don't want to fatigue yourself because this does take a lot of effort. So those 3 exercises, again, together can help improve your ability to generate force and as a result, improve your exit velocity. All right, Kellen, let's talk about improving your 60. The 2 things that I think I want you to be aware of to improve the 60 is the technique during the start, so the drive phase. The second thing, how important speed endurance is when it comes to that length of a distance. So when it comes, let's talk about the first thing. When it comes to the drive phase, the start of your 60, the common mistake is to rise out of your base runner stance. So when you look at what a 60 looks like, specifically for baseball, they'll usually have you start in a base runner stance. So from here, you would have to go into this linear sprint, this straight ahead sprint. What happens, the mistake that happens, like I said, is when athletes turn to run, their immediate reaction is to rise, to lift their chest and look at the horizon. What that does is it cuts short your drive phase. That phase, the start, is the most important piece and part for you to pick up your speed, to get to top end speed. If you go from this position, from the start position, you turn and you rise, you have cut off your ability to get to top end speed in the most efficient way possible. That is basically, you're limiting yourself just simply by doing the wrong technique. What I want you to know is the proper technique in order for you to maximize that 60. So what does that look like? So we want to do the opposite of rising. We want to keep that, we'll say 45-degree angle, this forward-leaning position through your body to help you run down this line. Because when you think about it, it's a line you're running from. You're trying to get from point A to point B. You're running in a straight-ahead line. So the goal here, if you can just bear with this concept, is you want to get your weight moving towards the end. In order for you to get your weight moving towards the end, you want to think about getting in this aggressive lean. When we look at what happens when you rise, when you step, when you run, when you're here, you turn and rise, your leg automatically comes up and over, and your foot lands with a vertical shin. When you land with a vertical shin, basically you push down against the ground, which is going to help or force you to rise, which is not what we want. What you actually want to do, okay, you want to strike the ground at a shin angle that's going to promote a forward drive, a forward lean, while actually driving down and back against the ground. So how you strike the ground, that's basically how you're going to direct yourself. So if you're striking the ground straight down, your body's going to go in that opposite direction. If you strike the ground in this 45-degree angle, well, your body's going to go in that direction. So we want to do what's called a piston. We want a piston-like action through the legs. You're going to be here. You're going to drive, keeping that foot down closer to the ground. And when you strike the ground, you want to strike the ground so that you have that 45-degree angle. If we slow-mo someone who's running pretty fast, you'll notice that that first step is going to land, and they're going to have this awesome 45-degree angle. Again, promoting forward projection of your hips and your entire body. That is going to help you maximize your ability to get to top end speed, okay? It's also going to do another psychological thing, which is it's going to allow you to shorten the distance in your head of what a 60 is. Think about it. If we start in this position, okay, and you run, and your first action is to rise and look at the horizon, you have 60 yards to run. You see this 60-yard distance you have to cover. Now, if you lean and accelerate in a forward-leaning posture correctly, you will slowly and gradually rise. It's gonna take you 10, 15, maybe, 10 to 15 yards, 10 to 15 meters for you to slowly get to this upright position. Now you only have to cover the rest of that, which is the 45 meters, 45 yards, and it doesn't seem as daunting versus starting here, looking forward. It seems a lot longer. So there's also that psychological mental benefit by starting correctly. So you want to make sure you're driving, you want to make sure you get in that appropriate lean. Now, ideally, you're practicing this with someone watching you, looking at your body mechanics, making sure you're running, you're maintaining the right postures. So if you don't have that, an awesome drill for you to train your body, train the motor pattern, the way the body needs to move. You basically want to get in a good aggressive lean, find a nice, you want to find a wall, something you can lean up against. You're going to get in a 45-degree angle. From here, make sure that your hips are locked out, your butt is not in the air. So that's not good, you want to have your hips through. Cool? From here, again, we're in this forward lean, okay? So in that position, you want to bring your shin up and mimic that body posture, that 45-degree angle. So in a very slow manner, you want to practice getting into that piston-like action, that piston transition, left, foot, right foot, switching back and forth. And as you get better with that, you can start getting more dynamic where you're switching 1, 2, maybe 3, 4, even 5, 6 steps at a time, switching back and forth. For example, basically training your body to look and feel this piston-like action. Once your body understands how to do that, that motor pattern, now you can go out on the track or on the field and start to think about practicing and adding into the start of your 60. You can set up your camera and take a look at it and try and see if you're watching those angles. Are you rising on your as far as your first movement out of the start, or are you doing a good job of maintaining that angle? So that's the question that you want to ask yourself anytime you're starting your 60. Most athletes rise too soon. The second thing I want you to understand is how much the end or the last 20 to 30 yards of your 60 impacts the overall time. What costs most baseball players time is their deceleration. They slow down at the end. So it's not that they're not fast, it's that they burn out, they get fatigued, they slow down. You can have a very high top speed. You can run and clock a very high overall speed, but that does not necessarily mean you're gonna have a fast 60, because if you don't have the speed endurance to maintain it for the whole 60, then you will start to slow down, and overall that's just gonna add time to your 60. So you wanna make sure that you have the endurance, the speed endurance. So I'm not telling you to run for miles. So let's get into how we improve it. We don't run miles as a baseball player and think we're gonna be faster on the baseball field. That's one of the biggest misconceptions people have about being faster, is that we have to run long distances to be faster. No, you need to train specifically for what you're trying to improve. So if you're trying to improve your 60, you need to practice running 60s. Okay? Within that, you can also practice running 30s, 40s, 50s. Anything that resembles and feels mostly like a 60 is a good way to train to improve the 60. Running miles is going to have no benefit to having a faster 60 time. Aside from maybe some psychological or like some mental, like self-belief or any like feeling that you can push through pain. Outside of that, there's really no benefit to running miles. If anything, running miles is going to reprogram your body to be better at slow twitch movement and slow twitch action, which is not baseball. So you need to make sure that you're training appropriately to be better at what you want to do, which is run a faster 60. So ultimately, I recommend you running 20s, 30s, 40s every so often mix in some 60s, and that is gonna help best improve your 60 time. Most often athletes, baseball players wanna be better at 60s, but they don't run it enough, they don't practice it. How are you gonna get better if you don't practice running the actual event or the actual thing you wanna get better at? You need to practice running 60s. So, ultimately, to improve your 60, we need to make sure the technique, the starting technique, is the right technique, and that we don't fizzle out at the end of that 60. So, make sure you train the 60, get a feel for it, run it a couple of times so you can get better at feeling and knowing what it feels like. All right, Kellen, I know that was a lot of information, but I really hope you take that to heart and you start to slowly implement it into your own training. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you succeed on the field.